Welcome to Women's Wealth and Wellness Unleashed. I'm Lori Falk, and together with my 4 powerhouse co-hosts and a slew of thought leaders and luminaries, we're bringing you a scintillating talk show style podcast that will disrupt the worlds of wealth and wellness as we know them today. We invite you to go on this journey with us as we offer you a paradigm shift that empowers you to change your approach to these key areas of your life. Join us for Women's Wealth and Wellness Unleashed, where the future of wealth and wellness begins with you. Welcome to another episode of Women's Wealth and Wellness Unleashed. We're so excited that you've joined us again today because we are going to talk about the elephant in the room. Here we have this amazing topic, wealth and wellness. And there are 2 subjects that are so pivotal in women's lives. And the one that gets addressed the least often is the wealth conversation. So while we have a plethora of information to share with you about holistic health and wellness, we're going to actually start right off the bat with this lie of lack that seems to exist around holistic medicine. I've been a health and wellness coach for over 2 decades now, and the number one thing I hear is, "Oh, that's a great idea. I just can't afford it," or "Insurance doesn't cover it," or. It's always because it's too expensive. And yet, your health is your wealth. If you don't have your health, you have nothing. You know, it's just a really interesting approach that people can't grasp. But this body, you got one shot at this. You got to take care of it. You got to do the absolute best. My philosophy is you're going to pay for it one way or another. You might as well pay on the inside, putting the good stuff on the inside versus, those types of things going forward. So, that was a little disruptive, I'll bet. Sorry, people. That's what we promised you. We were going to be a little disruptive. So our wealth expert is the amazing Leslie Thomas, who actually graduated with a master's degree yesterday. And I just want to congratulate you again, Leslie. That's such a huge accomplishment. And going back to school and getting a degree at this age, my goodness. What was that like for you? And why did you choose to do it?
Oh, that's a question. I don't know is the honest answer. I think when I originally went to university, my gosh, 30 plus years ago, that was very much planned. But doing a master's in my 50s was never ever on the table. But something was nagging at me that I wanted to go back and study to deepen my level of knowledge and experience, and that nagging feeling wouldn't go away. So I think for me it was leaning into something I wasn't fully conscious of, and just trusting in the process and going on a journey that has led to me being much more trustful of my own ability and my own intuition to know what I needed, even when I wasn't necessarily consciously looking for it. I hope that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, to think that when we're in our late teens, early 20s, that we know all that we're going to want to do with our whole lives is a little crazy. So I do, I've totally re-careered myself. I went from being in the fashion industry to a health and wellness coach. So I was all about helping people on the outside, and now I'm all about helping people on the inside. And I woke up this morning looking at your Facebook posts with your cap and gown and the whole thing, and I was celebrating you. And then I was thinking about our podcast. I was thinking about the strides and trials and tribulations that we as women have gone through over the last number of decades. So Leslie, I know you coach a lot of women around money issues. Don't you think things like this stick with women and make it a little bit harder to have the abundance in their lives that they need?
Oh, massively so. Absolutely. And it's so interesting you talking about this now because there's a big conversation going on in the coaching world in the UK at the moment with regards to there's lots of discovery calls going on, lots of conversations where people are interested in buying coaching services, etc., but are coming up with exactly as you said, oh, the time's not right. I can't afford it right now. It's not a priority. But they've gotten on that call. So obviously something has driven them to have the conversation, but they're stopping themselves from making that investment. And very often it comes back to the fact that as women, we put ourselves right at the bottom of the priority list. We put everybody ahead of us. And in times when there's nervousness around the economy, at times when we're feeling a little bit sensitive about what might be happening in the world globally that could be impacting, our bank account, our wallet, etc., we as women tend to go, I will go without just to make sure everybody else doesn't have to make that decision. And I think that does go back to things that have gone on for a long, long time, that we don't value ourselves. And very often we will not see ourselves as being worthy of being invested in, be that our health, be that our ability to invest in our business, be it our ability to develop ourselves as far as our education is concerned, because we innately struggle with putting ourselves first. That saying, on an airline, if you're on a plane, always put your oxygen mask on first before trying to help somebody else. But I think as women, we can forget that. We can deprioritize ourselves and make other people that priority. But in doing so, we are giving away our opportunity to help create more for ourselves. And I definitely agree with you, Laurie. The lie of lack. There is plenty of money around. We are just very often allowing that money to be diverted off elsewhere. And if we don't get to a point where we truly choose to invest in ourselves, then the biggest cost is not just to us, but it's also to those people that we are making decisions who they're more important than us. Their needs need to be met ahead of our own. And I think that is why we're getting people having the conversations with regards to, I want to find out more about what you can do to help me. But at that very point where they are then presented with how much that investment is going to be, they say to themselves, I can't afford it. Rather than reframing it as, what can I do so I can afford it? And to understand what has brought them to that point of wanting to have the conversation, but then actually stopping short of doing the thing they know deep in their hearts they want to do.
Leslie, you used the word priority earlier, and I'm so glad that you did, because I would observe that most of the time when people say, I can't afford, it's a question of priorities and values. There are always things for most of us that we can't afford because they're important enough. But you also spoke to something deeper, which I think of as the elephant in the room, that we said we wanted to explore today, which is that I can't afford conversation seems to be pretty consistent, regardless of the level of resources people actually do have access to. that there's a default in our world of scarcity, that we don't start from, oh, that's great. Let me think about how I can make it happen. The first thought is, I can't afford it. And again, this isn't just a question of what our resources are. People with lots of resources, I would observe, are in that state of lack anyway. And what, we've been discussing here in this group is that underlying thing is one of the things we wanted to sort of, point to, because it rarely gets explored. So I would love to hear more, because you have so much experience in this area, about that.
And I think it really comes back to what we believe we are worthy of, what we believe is our ability to choose, and what we choose. There's a book by Gay Hendricks called The Big Leap, and he talks about an upper limit. We all of us have an upper limit, and an upper limit with regards to what we are prepared to believe is possible for us in terms of everything, in terms of money, in terms of friendship, in terms of the quality of our relationships, in terms of how we look, in terms of how we feel, how happy we are, in terms of how grateful we feel, etc., etc. And throughout the book, Gay references people who have had a huge amount of success and then go on to sabotage that success because their thermostat, their inner thermostat, is set to a point that they reach that I've reached this level of success financially, in my career, whatever it might be. I can't actually believe I can go past this point. It's not conscious, it's totally and utterly subconscious. And unless you unpick where your upper limit is at, then you're always going to end up butting up against it, basically, like banging your head on a glass ceiling. And it's only when you look around and you see the kind of lifestyle other people are living, the kind of relationships that they have, the kind of success that they are enjoying, the kind of romantic relationships they might have, etc., etc. And when you start to understand, well, actually, it's possible for me to push past my upper limit, no matter how uncomfortable it might feel to do that. When you start to do it, when you start to see it's not as scary as you think it is to push past where your thermostat is set to. And that's not about turning the dial, hard left, hard right. It's actually about just turning it a few degrees, challenging yourself rather than saying to yourself, well, it's okay. I've got this. It's enough. I have this. I should be grateful. Because the problem with gratitude to a certain extent is we train ourselves to accept the limit that we are at, rather than saying, I'm grateful I've got here, but actually I know I can go further. And that relates to every single aspect that is important in our lives. And I think for everybody, because everybody has an upper limit, it's just for some of us, our limit has been turned up higher than it has for other people. But I think for all of us to be able to look ourselves in the mirror and actually ask ourselves, am I now butting against my upper limit? And in doing so, what is it costing me? What is it costing me to stay here? What is it costing me in terms of regret in years to come and looking back and feel I settled? Because actually, for me, I am more scared of the regret of having settled than I am at feeling afraid of failing. I'm not afraid of failing because we only ever learn from failing. I am afraid of looking back and thinking, why didn't I take that opportunity? Why didn't I say yes when that was presented to me? What am I really afraid of by doing X, Y, or Z? And I think when we can understand what is it I'm afraid of, then we put ourselves in the position to be able to make a different decision with regards to how we're going to move forward.
I have a question, Leslie, because it's a little bit different here in the States. You know, we have a lot of the issues that I hear are women or people in general saying, oh, I would love that, but I can't afford it, because they feel, as far as their health and their wellness goes, they are bound to insurance and what their insurance will allow them to experience. And I know, you know, a lot of other places in the world include healthcare, and we don't have to, you know, you don't have to think about that aspect so much. And I would love to know your perspective being in the UK. Is that something that you are kind of bound to? Do you have a set type of rules that you have to follow when it comes to healthcare? Do you see holistic opportunities a lot? What is that presented to you like in the UK?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the health system in the UK is different because our healthcare is free at the point of delivery. So no matter what is wrong with you, you can go and visit, you know, a doctor, you can go into hospital and have, you know, whatever surgery or treatment, you know, that you need medically, not necessarily from, you know, from a cosmetic perspective, although actually that is available on the healthcare system as well, depending on how it's affecting you. But we also have a private healthcare system as well, because our public system is creaking at the edges, and probably more than creaking at the edges, simply because it wasn't designed with 70 million people in mind. It was designed at the end of World War II when there were 30 million people, you know, in the UK, somewhere around that. We are more aware now than we were about helping ourselves, being more proactive about our health, but we still have tens of thousands of doctor's appointments every day that are not attended. People just don't, they literally do not turn up to those appointments. They don't ring the doctor up to say, I'm fine, I'm not coming in, or something else has come up, I can't come in. So there is a question with regards to how much do we actually value our health system in the UK if we're not prepared to let people know that we're not going to turn up for that appointment, so that appointment can then be given to somebody else. But our system is less expensive for a start. So even our private healthcare system is far less expensive than the American way of delivering healthcare. I agree with you that people see healthcare as being expensive, but I genuinely think, to Susan's point, it comes down to priorities. What are you prioritizing over what in the UK? Because I know in America things can be hugely, hugely expensive. But if you can look after the vessel that you have before the problems start to exist, then surely that is going to be less expensive over time, and to look at yourself as an investment. So when you buy a car, for example, you will spend time cleaning that car. You will spend time having that car serviced on a regular basis. You will ensure, the tires are fit for purpose. You will ensure you change the oil when you need to change the oil, and you top up the windscreen wash, etc., etc. You're looking after your investment. Why would you not look after this vessel that you only get one opportunity to look after? Why would you allow it to be like a car, just, out in the rain, never changing the oil, never looking at the windscreen wash, never taking it for a service, And yet you hope that every time you get in that car, it's going to be able to take you from, from A to B. And for me, simply turning around and saying, I can't afford it. I can't afford it because I've made other decisions with regards to what I'm going to spend my money on, or looking at what small changes can I make now to allow me to be able to make that investment in the future. And I think it does come down to looking at yourself holistically and actually saying, what do I need to do to ensure my body is able to be as effective and to be working at its top capacity for as long as possible? And I think when you don't do that, that is when you look over your shoulder in a few years' time and you go, oh, so I've now got a problem with my bones, my joints. I've got pain. I can't sleep properly, etc., etc. So I do think it's incumbent on all of us and everybody listening to go, okay, what is my real priority? And what is holding me back from investing in that real priority? And it could be genuinely right now, you don't have the money. But if it's really important to you, what do you need to deprioritize, to reprioritize, so that going forward, you can understand, what do I need to do to ensure this vessel is as healthy as it can be? Because actually, nobody is coming to save me. It is on me.
We can be talking, this is a topic that we can go off on in so many different directions. I mean, the first thing I want to share is that when we're talking about I can't afford it, maybe the question is, what can I not afford to do? You can't afford to give up on yourself. You can't afford to not put yourself as a priority. But doesn't that go back to our limiting beliefs, what we heard as children, what we saw, whether it was, we heard the story of the family had no money and kids needed shoes. And so mom, sacrificed and did something to help them. I mean, we've been programmed through the years in the whole idea of what money doesn't grow on trees. We can't afford to, we got to tighten in the belt. All those little expressions that we kind of heard and we didn't think really maybe made a difference, they do.
I think values is a really, really important point to make, because when I was in corporate, we had private health insurance, included as part of our benefits package. And then when I left corporate 14 years ago, I made the instant decision that I was setting up private healthcare for me and my family, because I didn't want to ever be in a situation where, if anything went wrong with any of us, that we would have to be at the back of the queue because our NHS system is creaking, etc. I wanted my family and I to be seen right away. I have seen that insurance go up and up and up over the years. And for some people, they've gone, whoa, can't afford that. We're going to stop paying that. And I made a commitment to myself and my family that regardless, that was a priority for me. And I made decisions, around my money, my budget, etc., to ensure that we would continue to pay for private insurance. And since COVID in the UK, because our NHS stopped, the only thing that was being treated was COVID during, literally during COVID times. So there's a massive backlog now of people waiting for all sorts of different treatment. My son developed a problem with his foot that he would probably still have to be dealing with now, had we not had private insurance that allowed us to effectively jump the queue. Now, some people might say, well, it's wrong. It's wrong that you were able to pay to jump the queue. It's a completely different hospital, by the way. It's a private hospital. But I'm sorry, that is what money does. Money gives you choices. Money isn't, or wealth is not just about having X amount of money and more. Wealth is about the choices you can make with regards to what you do with the money that you have. If anybody listening to this, has a limiting belief that, well, my place in the queue is here and I never want to jump that queue, there are people who will always look at ways to give themselves choices. And I would always rather be one of those people that works towards giving myself those choices. And I think that is hugely important to recognize, because when people hear the word wealth, many people will feel really prickled by it, because they will see wealth as being something that multimillionaires aspire to. It's not. To me, wealth is about having the ability to choose. And I believe that anything is possible for all of us. That is my belief. And I think when you have that belief, you work to prove it's correct. Just as if you have the opposite belief, that you do not believe that anything is possible for you, then if you fight for your limitations, you get to hang on to them. And I think that's a really important point you made there, Sherry, is that it's our belief, whether it's limiting or not, it's our beliefs that stop us. And we need to really understand what our beliefs are and what our values are and what we value. And when we can do that, we can step out of saying, it's not possible for me, I can't afford it. You can simply say, I can't afford it right now, but it's really important to me. So I am going to find a way to make it work. I have the facts. I know how much it's going to cost. So now I'm going to find a way. And I think that is really important to understand and believe.
And as we continue with this conversation, we're going to be talking about the energies and frequencies that we send out into the world. We'll have even more of an understanding of why the I can't afford really is so limiting in terms of the opportunities and experiences that we attract. So, even in a state which, most of us can relate to at some times, where our resources are not as adequate as we would like them to be, I really do take pains to language that in such a way, like I just did. I'm in the process of, aligning with the resources I need for this, and I need some more time. That's a different message to be sending out. And I think if we accomplish nothing else here today, just understanding how limiting that statement is, it may be something that a lot of people have never considered before, which is, of course, we wanted to be addressing it.
You know what, Susan, to that point, I remember hearing that when we're talking about energy and frequency, I remember hearing that the frequency of money is the same as the frequency of slavery. Now think
Our
about that.
world,
Everybody
Karen.
listening in our world, really digest that and think about that. Slavery, same frequency as money. What does that say? What does that tell us? And unfortunately, every day, if you listen to mainstream news or what's happening in the world, it's reinforced. The lie of lack is reinforced, that we don't have enough. We talk about our healthcare system. The healthcare system, it's really not a healthcare system. It's a disease management. Leslie just said, there's a long list and you have to wait. If somebody is really sick, they should get into a doctor. How many people after COVID developed illnesses that could have and might have been prevented because they couldn't get in to see a doctor? They had to put it on the back burner. So I think what it almost comes back to is how we want to be disruptive in a way to help shift and change the mindset and shift and change how the system is set up so that everybody can realize that they do have a choice, they do have an option, and that's what will make things change.
Yes, to your point, Jerry, money is actually said to vibrate at the frequency of 125,
Thank
which
you.
is actually the frequency or energy of enslavement. And that's exactly what money does. If you have enough, you're constantly on this hamster wheel and you're enslaved in trying to get more. You're in this angel, which is kind of tied into our logo. If I scooch over here, you can see it a little better, was created. So for those of you who have yet to be aware of this, I'm also a visionary artist. And I was asked to create a piece of art that would shift people's vibrational frequency from that low level to a higher level of joy. Well, joy vibrates at 540. 540. That is where love takes over. We're at 125, we're in a state of fear. And there's really only two questions you ever need to ask. Is it love or is it fear? If you're being motivated by fear, and that's at the root of all these things that we've been discussing here, right? I mean, I could have stayed in the energy of, does that pretty little blonde have any brains? Or went on, gotten a degree in spiritual psychology and specialized in the field of epigenetics. I guess I came full circle on the Farrah Fawcett look. But truly to kind of bring it back to what we were saying. Yes, Susan, it is all about choices and priorities, because one of my number one clients over the years worked at McDonald's. Now there's nothing wrong with working at McDonald's. I bring it up because that's minimum wage. And yet she came to every one of my programs and she never asked for a discount. And she just said to me one day, it's all about priorities. I would rather be here than get my nails done. I mean, sometimes it's that simple. So we've got that going on one of these plates that we're spinning. And then there's this other plate over here that as a society, yes, if you're in corporate, you have medical insurance. Often that's the case, but what we're talking about isn't just going to the doctor and getting blood work done or going in and having surgery. We're talking about being able to go out and get a massage, going to a chiropractor, having acupuncture, doing energy work, having a life coach or a health coach. All of those things are not covered by insurance. And the problem is that as a society, it's been so programmed in to our psyche that our health should depend on that insurance, because that insurance has always been there and it's always taken care of us. And it's shifting that core societal belief to saying, you know what, if I don't make time for my wellness, I will be forced to make time for the illness.
How,
Yeah,
many
no.
how many people think a massage is a luxury? And what does that mean? A luxury means that you have extra money to spend. Well, if you're trying to pay your bills or just you're thinking you don't have enough, that's not anything you're going to do. And how important is that for your health, mental, physical? So your point is well taken, Laurie.
I want to say something even more disruptive, and I'm going to guess we'll want to address this in a whole other episode. But we talked about some of the differences between the UK and the US. I'm going to say something else about the US. We have the highest healthcare costs and the worst outcomes of any developed country. So I'm going to challenge the idea that insurance equals well-being, because I live in the alternative world and I don't agree with that. But 12 years ago, I was actually hired to ghostwrite a book about why holistic medicine was the solution to the economic crisis in the United States, because the healthcare costs were wiping out companies and individuals. And that's a whole other thing, because I don't think that money is actually buying health. And the other disruptive thing I'll say just for the moment is, as many of us know, some of the things that we have available to support our well-being are free. Breathing is free. Walking more is free. So some of those limitations, of I can't afford, are not even dealing with the reality of the options that we have that don't require that value exchange. So like I said, I think that's another topic that we'll want to
I
return.
totally agree. Yeah,
We've
totally
beaten
agree.
this one pretty well today, but
Yeah.
I think we've really kicked off a really good conversation to let the world know what we're prepared to discuss here.
Absolutely. So thank you all for joining us for this exciting episode of Women's Wealth and Wellness Unleashed. And we invite you to come back in the weeks and months and years to come as we uncover and take a deeper dive into women's wealth and wellness unleashed. Thank you so much for joining us today on Women's Wealth and Wellness Unleashed, where we empower women to take control of the two most important areas of their life, their health and their wealth. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another amazing woman who's ready to elevate her wealth and wellness journey. Stay connected with us by heading to our website and joining our Facebook community. All the details can be found in the show notes. Until next time, keep thriving and unleashing your highest potential.